Okay, everyone, right, a response video. I'm going to tell you why I'm doing this. I'm also going to talk about sparring in a bit. So, at the end, so stay with it. Right, but do stay with it to learn a little bit of something. Right. Recently, I've had debates with Nate the Aussie, yeah, and before I start, basically I like to say we all need to get involved in this, and we all have our different opinions on how it should be done and things like that, and that's no problem. But there is a certain, and sorry, we should all come together and keep coming together, including Nate, and he should join in more with our society here like this and try and pull it out and do like that. But there is a certain line one cannot cross when you're in academic research and you're in academic sort of circles and you're pushing that way. And so recently I did a video, or yesterday I did a video, saying Nate's got a different idea to me to Ito Ryodan, and many of you saw it. But I said I didn't understand. I've already done this once. I've already explained the translation to him once, what the team's done, and he didn't take it on board. He just ignored that and did something else, and I was confused at this. And he said, oh, he's not, you know, and part of his complaint was that he didn't deal with people who are not qualified to translate. I did not for a minute think he was talking about my team. I just thought he was talking about, like, we've got to be careful where we get the translations from, which is fine. But in the end, it turns out he meant, no, my team. So he was like, so he says he only wants to work with William Scott Wilson's version, or Hiroaki Sato, and it just didn't clock that. So I was thinking, because the respect my team have across the world is massive now. It's really, really good. So I thought, yeah, we need to. I need to make a video on this. So I told him I'd make a video, so he knows this video's coming. So none of it's like as I say, me and Nate are not attacking each other, but there's a certain line you have to stop at, and that is, so for example, he says, there's lines you can agree to disagree. So he said, Anthony, you did your sparring contest, you've offered the world and all that. Only one person actually came up and went through it, and you did it. But, you know, just because it didn't end in injury doesn't mean you should be doing it. Well, I disagree, to be honest, but it's one of those you agree to disagree. I get in a car every day, and the chances of me dying in that car are massively high compared to me fighting in full protection with blunt swords, which people do for sport every day. You know, I've got more people probably die of coke machines falling on them and cows crushing them. And I go walking in the countryside. Cows crush a lot of people. I don't know if you know this, but especially if you walk wrong with cow, they will kill you. And it's like 4 a year die of cow death. I don't know how many people die a year from sparring with blunt swords. But then at the same time, he says, oh, if you don't spar, then we don't trust what you're doing. So, hold on a minute, I've just said I'm sparring. Do you know what I mean? So he's a bit confused there. But we can agree to disagree, because that's fine. Nate, you go on with your life, I'll go on with mine, no problem. I'm not going to stop what I'm doing. So, you know, if you know, there's a risk involved in many things. But anyway, so that's an agree to disagree. But what you can't agree to disagree on is translation. It's got to be good. And Nate was saying, oh, he wants to use William Scott Wilson. Like, first of all, Hiroaki Sato, Nate, no. I mean, I've lived in Japan. I've sat with these people. I've sat with translators. I've sat with top-level language specialists and all that, and ancient language specialists. And the simple fact is no. If you show them the original text and show them Sato's work, they'll be like, no, just throw it in the bin. It's not good. So no problem there. But right, so let's go to William Scott Wilson. Now, William Scott Wilson, what Nate does not understand is that William Scott Wilson is not native Japanese, yeah? He has, I've looked it up online, and according to BitOnline, he's got a master's degree in Japanese literature and language, or language and literature, which is phenomenal for a Westerner to go do his degree, get it there and all that. That's amazing. Does that make him trained in classical Japanese? Not really. But, you know, so let me ask you this. How many people have their degree in English language and literature? How many? Tens of thousands, 100,000, hundreds of thousands across the world who are English speaking. It's nothing amazing. It's not amazing. And so how many people in Japan have a degree in Japanese literature and language? Probably a lot. So he's no different to the average speaking language. Well, he is different to the average master's degree student in Japan who go off to work in offices and all that. It doesn't make them world-renowned scholars on ancient texts. But it's an amazing feat that he did it. But he's also below them because he's not a native speaker. And I've spoke to so many native Japanese speakers who say there's amazing, like, people with knowledge of this kanji, that kanji, but they miss that last 10% because they're not native and they miss the old ways. So I'm no way am I saying William Scott Wilson is bad. In fact, I've had his Hey Ho Cadencio checked, and they've said it's pretty good. You know, it's a good. There's nothing wrong with it. It's good. It's good. But his, not the Hey Ho Cadencio, this bit at the back here is slightly flawed because he just didn't quite understand some of the terminology and some of that. But again, translation is not always wrong or right. It's usually out of focus. And the more out of focus it is, the harder it is to get what you want. And that's okay when you're reading philosophy and you're like, oh, it's a bit philosophical anyway. It could mean that, could mean that. It doesn't matter. But when you've actually got to put it into practice, put a sword here and a sword there, it becomes a slight out of focus, changes everything, okay? So let me explain to you how translators work. So what William Scott Wilson has done is achieved a great thing by having a degree in Japanese, but what he's done is he's not gone and got the original text and worked only from that. So Nate, you need to understand this. There are lots of books in Japan. So you see, I did my Lost Samurai School with Miyako Koizumi, and about 50% of the scrolls in there had never been translated before, and 50% have been analysed. Now, what you don't realise, if a text is famous, like Hagakure or Heiho Kadensho, there are books in Japanese written by professors or amateur or whatever, but there's plenty and plenty of books out there written where they are typed up wonderfully with little footnotes and everything, and it explains this, and it says this person's view is that, and this person's view is that, and they've done this, etc., etc. And when you get, say, 10 books on the same subject, you can then write about it. For example, I do not speak Chinese, but there are hundreds of books on the art of war. So I went through the art of war because I have a master's degree at university, just like William Scott Wilson, and I put it together. My master's degree is in ancient history and archaeology, so it's exactly what I'm meant to be doing, is analysing old data, putting it together and putting that. And I created that. That's great. I'm not a Chinese specialist, but it's a good piece of work that was done. This is a good piece of work. It's the same thing. He's gone and analysed other people's work. I analysed other people's work and said, well, this kanji means that and that kanji that. That's fine. When we did Lost Samurai School, we had to analyse half some people's work, but then there was lots that was never been touched for. I found one, you know, just at an event, and that never been analysed before, some of them. So you've got to really pick out those things and say, okay, well, what's that mean? What's this mean? So we did this once. We did working from other people's work. We did once with the Shoninki. We did it once. And you know what? We carried their mistakes with us. And it turns out Yoshie was just better than the people who'd done it before. And she went back over it for the second red edition, not the blue edition. And she was like, yeah, Anthony, I shouldn't have listened to them say that. And I listened to this person, their theory wasn't right and all this. And so that is one of the only works that we did that was because the Shoninki is famous. But for example, this, Egan Cook and Ninja Skills. Nobody had ever done any work on it, Nate. Nobody. So there was no book we could pick up that had all the references, everything spelled out in nice sort of like typed kanji that explains it. And any native reader of a language can get 10 books. And if they've been to university or are just intellectual, naturally, they can put a good book together, cross-referencing this. Amateurs, professionals, there's not really much difference when the work's out there done for you. When the work's out there and done for you, like Art of War, you just have to gather information. That's the difference. But nobody's ever seen that script before, so it was from scratch. So from the original documents, without any help, she did it. Now, the same goes for the Bansen Shukai. Did you know, before we published the Bansen Shukai, there was no single edition of the Bansen Shukai ever produced? Every translated word in there, every question answered was done from the work of me and Yoshie, taking 4 years to work out every sentence, every line. What does that mean? Where does that go? So, like I say, there's mistakes, there's focused points, out of focus points, bits where you might have gone off. But on the whole, we're very proud of that. And the reason I can tell you we're proud of that, Nate, is because people have been trying to get rid of me and Yoshie's work, or my and Yoshie's work, for years, analysing it and analysing this and analysing that. Can find hardly anything. I know where the problems are. Me and Yoshi are like, not sure about that, not sure about that. There's a possibility. So I know where there's more problems in this book than the enemies know. But the enemies, Yoshi did such a great job on this that even the enemies are like, well, she's good, but Anthony's not. Same with this. Text never been seen before. Have to do it. Now, what you might... So, William Scott Wilson, again, not taking anything from him, has literally just did what I did on there and gone and got texts which are already well known, well established, written out, typed out, yep, and done it. And I couldn't tell you for all of his books, but I bet you if you went and checked, all of his books are well-known classics. He's done the Buddhist classics, these classics, that classics. Why? Because he's got a degree in Japanese language and literature, which means he has the ability to read everybody else's work and pull it together, which is part of what academia is. You get first line academia, so the higher level stuff, which is original text translated into the first form. We are the first to do it. And then you get people who work off that, and different people work off that. And in the end, hopefully you get the broader picture. But Nate is saying he wouldn't use our translation because he doesn't think they're qualified. But Nate, it's such a misunderstanding of what actually goes on in translation. So, for example, many of the scrolls that we use come in Sosho. Now, Sosho is really grass style, really hard to understand. Now, what people don't realize is they didn't write. So here we go. There are something like 120 ways to spell the word scissors from history. Okay, I found it in an almanac of all places, just random almanac of this, that, and the other. It said, how many ways are there to spell the word scissors? And it was the greatest lesson for me in translation for Japanese, because it said 120, and it listed them all. X, X-I, X-X-O-R, S-I-X-X, you know, and there was loads and loads of different ways to spell scissors. It's the same for Japanese. Before standardization, there's loads of different ways you can say one thing. Not only that, the language structure is slightly different as well. So we had to take this to some specialists, because there'll be certain ones where we've not specialized in. We couldn't quite get it. So we put together a group of old amateurs, if you like. They are amateurs, but they were, when you get a Japanese old man amateur, he's retired from his job, but that's all he does, and he works, and they are top ranking, amazing, specialists. And they'll be writing out, and they can beat some of a lot of professors don't work with that. A lot of professors work with the typed and the multiple books, but you get people who specialize in just what alphabet is that, with dictionaries this thick, and we went to them and we put the stuff together and they said, yeah, got it. And then Yoshi started studying under them to the point where she was actually pretty much as good, and she could do that. Then Miyako, the same, did it. Yep, she's got it. She studied that. But the Buddhist stuff, we were like, what about Sanskrit, and what about Bonji and all this stuff? So we got a monk involved now, a Natori monk. So he's been to a full-on monk school to learn Indian Sanskrit, Old Chinese, and Japanese, and religion. And if I ever have a problem with Sanskrit, up he goes, comes back, big book, dictionary, this, and he's like, so for example, he checked the Bansen Shukai one for us. He's like, yeah, but it's wrong. Not our Bansen. He says Fujibayashi Yasutake, who here got it wrong, but he says that's just what they did in the past. They spelled scissors wrong. It's like going back and saying, oh, you spelled scissors. Well, they spelled it wrong. Yeah, but that's how they spell it. So he said, yeah, they've done this Sanskrit wrong. But so religion checked. So all that sorted. Also, Yoshie literally has a degree in translation. So she's native level, and she got a degree from what you consider a Yale University. It's a very high-ranking university. I think the International Christian Institute or something like that. But it's basically one of Japan's highest. And she got a degree in translation into English, okay? And her full-time job is translating for a high-end audio firm on stereo instructions. When you get stereo instructions, they're really difficult to understand. Her job is translating for the Air Force One high-end. They're like thousands of pounds each, and that's her job. That's what she does. So she has a degree in translation. Her job is in translation. She has studied for the last 15 years Edo period, Sengoku period writing, and going through and background sourcing all of that, including Miyako. And I've now got two more translators working with me. One is a third who doesn't want to be known because they're in the Koryu world, and she doesn't want the arguments and hassle. So, but she has a job in a Japanese company, speaking native Japanese, speaks Japanese in the home and all that. Do you know what I mean? That's it. It's a Japanese environment. What more can you want? But they have. What I'm saying is they specifically focus on Koryu. And then my Chinese translator works. We're just doing our first project, and I've invited Nate to come and view the Chinese guy. So Nate won't be seeing. I've got a thread going. Nate won't be seeing my Japanese translators work, but they'll see what we do with the Chinese ones. And this is the first time I've used this Chinese translator, and we're going through it, and we're having a lovely time, and there's about 10 of us there in the background working out, and that's why you get the stuff on there with the Chinese translation. So I really find it problematic when Nate says, won't even look at our translation. It says no. So Nate, I like Nate's interpretation. Nate, I think he's a very positive thing in the community. He's, he's getting there. He's got a small channel, but he's trying to get it bigger. And I know you do that. You basically reference bigger people, like he's referenced me. I reference us. I see him referencing lots of people. No problem with that. Get yourself big, do it. No problem whatsoever. That's what we're all here for. But what you can't do, Nate, is say, so basically, in the academic world, when somebody comes along and says, this is my translation, I think you're wrong. This is my translation. This is where it is. So somebody approaches a professor and says, I've retranslated this, but I think your translation is wrong. Oh, do you have a certificate from the university? No, then I can't see your translation. But I've noticed this, and this, and this, and this there, and I can prove it. There it is in black and white. There you go. I'm sorry, if you don't have the right qualifications, we're not going to look at it. Nate, that never happens. That never happens. All academics will go, let me have a look. And then they'll know within 5 minutes, they'll be like, yeah, no, nonsense. No, thank you. The problem is you can't do that. I'm going to show you. Here you go, Nate, there you go. Well, you don't have the Japanese skill. I don't have the Japanese skill, but because I don't, I put together a team which do. So basically, Nate then wants to then take that false start from someone with a degree in Japanese literature and language, working off other people's work, but who has got a good solid translation, but it's out of focus for the last 20% is out of focus, and the end scroll, the Mokoroku, is probably 70% focused in, but 30% out of focus. So what I'm trying to say here is the one scroll that's got lots of work done on it, he's like at the 90% mark, the 95% mark. On the scroll that's got almost no work done on it, it's just been typed out, and I've got the Japanese books where it's just typed out, he's struggled. Yep. Even to the point where, you can say, oh, this, I can show you the problems. Metsuke was one of them, which we said. So there is that now makes, whenever you watch Nate's stuff, so Ito Ryodan, it now makes Nate in the wrong position, because it's just, he says, oh, first of all, he's working from Sato, which is terrible. I mean, guys, if I could just show you. There was one thing I remember once, when I still believed in Hatsumi and the Budokan and all that, I went to different sword schools. I went to all around the martial artists in Japan and all that. And just once I saw one martial artist, he was a famous one. And he was like, oh, where did you train at Budokan? He went, oh, ninja. And it was that moment where you just knew someone who was a professional at what they did. They worked with all the original scrolls. They did everything. They were well versed in all of it. They were reasonable and everything. And even when they went, okay, mate. You know what I mean? Well done. Are you with the pixies too? You know what I mean? There's gold at the end of the rainbow too, if you have a look. And you're like, God, I'm embarrassed. I've got to move. You know what I mean? That doesn't always mean they're wrong, but there's a point where you're like, yeah, don't do that. So Hiroaki Sato, his translation is not a translation. And if you put it between a load of Japanese scholars, William Scott, they just say no. So you can't start there. That's got to be ditched. Now, it doesn't mean the book is useless. There are sections of the book which I enjoy and references to follow up on, but it's not good enough, because I started with that book and it just is not good enough. And then William Scott, so Nate would prefer to use someone who's got a degree which is pretty much the same as everybody else, non-native, using other people's work to do it, and also struggling with the end bit because nobody's worked on it. Whereas if I've put together a team where we have any religious aspects, I have a monk, we have social trained people, we have swords trained people, all of them native Japanese level speakers, you know what I mean, who are there chatting away in Japan and everything, and they're basically sorting it out. Now, Nate might not know this, but everybody in Japanese school gets taught ancient Chinese, ancient sort of language, but they do it to a very basic level, but they get the idea. So, but not enough to then go on and publish, but you know, it's a fundamental training that they get. And I'm sure William Scott Wilson has done the basic kindergarten sort of early primary school version of that as well, and then gone on to try and do other stuff. But Nate, to simply say, I can't look at your translation, Anthony, because I don't value non-qualified people, but then pick up somebody who's non-qualified. They're not qualified. They have a very basic master's degree, which means they can use other people's, native people's work. You know what I mean? And then not only that, it doesn't matter if he's qualified or not. It doesn't matter, Nate. If this was the best translation in the world, he could be a circus juggler for all you care. It's correct. So I've got another story of a man who he did really bad at university. I think he went to Oxford, but he got like a third. He was just drinking and young and all that. He's now about 80-year-old, and but he understood Beowulf, and he said on Old English, and he says nearly every academic has got these 3 points. It doesn't make sense, because if you don't know, Beowulf, there's only one transcription, one in existence, and in transcriptions you get mistakes. And he said they all translate those mistakes directly, and it doesn't make any sense. But if you use this kanji instead, actually it makes sense, and it fits into the Anglo-Saxon world. And that was his point. And he has a terrible degree and no qualification, doesn't have a job in university, but he's like, I can prove this is my point. And when he approached academics, they said, we agree with you, that's actually a really good point, but we have to sort of stick with the general rule, but we actually agree with you. And but they said you should go and publish it, but because he has a bad degree and because he has misspent youth, he didn't have the courage to publish what was clearly correct, and they thought was clearly correct, but they didn't want to go out on a limb and publish it, you know what I mean, because it's not their work, and the academics don't steal work. They were like, please publish that, you know what I mean. So it's then got us into the academic political side of it. So anyway, so Nate, what I'm trying to say is, by you saying, Anthony, I won't look at the translation your team's done, I'm only going to go off this, it's like asking, you know, this level. Here's where we all are, us non-speakers, basic pitter-patter. I'm down here. I'm here. This is where William Scott Wilson is. Trounces me in an instant. This is where my team are. Up here. The reason I have gone from here to here is because I put this team together. William Scott Wilson, he's 80-year-old now, he's getting to there. But you'll never beat that team because you've got native level speakers, university trained, Buddhist trained, social trained, all trained, multiple minds coming together with a native English speaker who's got a qualification, the qualification he needs to do this, versus one man trying to do it all. But yet you're saying, I'm not going to deal with Anthony because I don't think he's qualified. It's ridiculous, Nate. That is ridiculous. So that's where I don't engage with, like, I won't engage with Nate in that sort of thing. So for, like, Nate, what Nate would have to do is go away and say, okay, Anthony, I've got a translation. I've spoke to a Japanese speaker and all this, and then but I've put it online, Nate, and nobody's questioned it. I have enemies galore. No one said it's wrong. No one. Yep. Now, Nate, the difference is interpretation of the text. So we move on to that. I like your interpretation, Nate. I like the way you do it. I like everything. I love the fact that you've got your mate with you and everything and all that. No problem. That's wonderful. But if you interpret from the wrong evidence, you end at the wrong place. And that is basic history. You need the biggest picture you can get. So you coming in using a clearly outdated, terrible text, and then using a mid-range text, and then saying, I won't bother with anybody else's because I don't want to, leads you down the wrong path. I have never turned a translation away, never turned anything away that I can use because I didn't think that person might not have had the right certificate somewhere if it's a valuable work. So my team have the right certificates. They are qualified. Some of them do Koryu. They are trained in monasteries. Yep. And I have got my qualifications, and we together create that. So I hope that helps, Nate. So I won't be doing, basically I'm doing this for the rest of you. I'm doing this because this happened in the beginning of ninjutsu and with the Bujinkan, and it took years and years, and I was battling for years. So what I do now is I'll pick one, like Ito Ryodan, because it's the simplest one. So Ito Ryodan is the simplest one to interpret, right? It is the number one simplest one. And even there, we're having problems. So I cannot bog myself down with doing all 28. So I'm doing this for you guys so you can say, Anthony is open. He shows his translations. He's got his team working with us, with him. He knows what's going on. He's open and totally honest about everything. He's not saying he's doing it. He's got a team. Anthony's the producer, the polisher. My job is T-boy, producer, polisher of the work, advertiser, and project manager. That's me. And I pull all them strings in together so that you guys, so we go back, down, in, smack, carry up with 5, Ito Ryodan. Off you go. Took us 2 years to get to that. Okay? And lots of study. So, and the other thing I was sparring, I said I'd talk about. Basically, it is quite annoying, is that Nate was like, in the last video, I said, I don't believe in outright sparring produces better results. And he said, well, I don't think we can really interact because you don't believe in that. But yeah, he's never sparred. Yeah, I'm the one who's been out sparring, and he's telling me not to spar because, and I'm sparring, I'm like, to test it. And he's like, oh, you're not pressure tested, Anthony. I literally drove to the other end of my country and pressure tested it with someone. And you said, don't do that. And then we're like, well, actually, you should spar. I was sparring. So, Nate, come on. Let's not be silly about these things. I've not seen you sparring, but I have gone and sparred a total stranger to do it, who was a great guy, Chris, great guy. And nobody else will accept my challenge. Nobody. We've had lots of people try and swindle their way in to say, oh, I did, but I didn't know, in the middle of COVID and all that. I just want some friendly matches with people across the country. We can't get the kit to America because it's too expensive to take. It weighs more than your luggage, basically, or we might have to buy it in America. I am going to America, guys, in November. I'm going to Michigan, so I'll be there, but we won't have sparring gear. I've literally got to carry on luggage, and that's it. It will probably take a loss as well because it's so expensive to travel now. So, and the amount it costs to hire places, do that. We're going to struggle. I might end up paying to teach, so that's a problem. So please do come to that seminar, everyone, so we can sort of clear our, get it going. I'd like to do, I'm going to be calling it Samurai Day 2024, Samurai Day 2025. I'm going to try and get around the world doing seminars on that sort of stuff. So you've heard it here first, Samurai Day 2024, and I will take you through all our translations and stuff. So, and my point about sparring is that, and then Nate went, oh, you don't do pressure testing. Of course I do pressure, so you don't be whacking things and pushing it. And anybody, when I finally do get someone here, because I'm in the middle of nowhere, we pressure test them. But there's pressure testing, and there's outright sparring, and there's brawling. And brawling, you do enough of that when you're young, it doesn't matter. You know if you can fight, you can. In your own mind, everybody knows you fight or you not fight at the end. But pressure sparring, so sparring will keep you fit. It will keep you a bit, lithe and all that, and give you a good thing. But it won't help you train to muscle memory. You never get muscle memory out of sparring. You get muscle memory out of repetitive training. It's very for boxers. Boxers don't just go in the ring and go ba 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 bang, ba 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 bang, and every day it's like, should we train ba 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 bang? No, they learn on the bag and they get it until it's muscle memory. Then they do the bag work. You see Tyson do it in the minute, ready for the pull Jake, and they get it ready, the bag work and all that, and they're swinging it and pushing back, and then eventually the fight comes along and they've got to pull from that, and they do spar, but it's a tiny fraction of the training. So this is what I'm saying is, you first of all get the form down, shuhari, get the form down, and then you start pressure testing it with against bags, and can you feel it going in, and how does this work and that. Then you obviously need a partner, but I live in the middle of arse and nowhere, so then we start building it up, and then a bit more, then a bit harder than pressure testing. Then you test it with sparring at the very end like that, which I have done that. So basically I find it a bit strange that Nate has gone. Nate is nice, but he came across wrong at first. And he's not a bad lad, he's nice. And I don't want anybody to think negative of him. But basically, you can't go along to someone who's literally openly challenged the world to spar in Koryu and actually gone and done it, and nobody else will turn up. And then it's like, or they'll do something crafty like, come in COVID, oh, Anthony, come in COVID, and don't even message me or anything, or send me a message. And it's like, I've had that. People have said, oh, put videos up, come and fight, I'll come fight. I've never even seen the video or been sent it. The next thing I've heard is, oh, you didn't turn up to a fight, which was in the middle of COVID restrictions. It was like in another country where I can't take the kit. It was like, come on, Kyojitsu at its best. So totally retarded. So, what we need, guys, is a bit of fun, a bit of love in the community. Let's get rid of all those idiots, and then come along and be like, okay, how can we improve this? So Nate, what you need to do now is take my translation of Heike Jordan, Ito Ryodan, and go through it and use your interpretations and go from there. Now, if you don't believe it's real, I can't help you. You can't challenge it because you're not doing it. And I've shown you where he's wrong, and I've shown you the text. There's nothing more I can do. So there we go, guys. Right, so do support Nate. Go over, have a look at his videos. So what's going to happen is I'll ask Nate to put up a message here, and I will pin his comment. So go and have a look at his channel, guys. Nate, can you put can you please link a video in your comment, because people can't go from the profile picture annoyingly. So put a link in your video saying this is what I said to Anthony before, and then hopefully they'll follow the link and subscribe. So make sure you put the right one of us in. Right, guys, there you go. It's a lot of work to translate books. So translations. Yeah, we've got some. I think I've got something like 1 million words translated through my translators. Their experience is undoubted. These books have been under fire for 15 years, and as they've been coming out, they're under fire. And everybody has said, even my worst enemies have said, we hate Anthony Cummins, but his team get it right. That's what my worst enemies say, and they say it in not so polite terms, Nate. So for you to come along and say, I'm just not using that, is you need to come on up to the mark. Let's go. Get Ito Ryodan done from our translation, and then compare it. And even take it, I'll send you the digital form if you want to use a Google Translate, which you'll get nowhere with. But you can translate the individual right foot here, move, like, you can try that, no problem. Right, guys, see you later. Oh, don't forget Samurai Difficult. Get that, or Book of Bashir on Audible. Audible, guys, for that.